Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Now today, I'm going to be looking at pyramids and tomb structures and tomb and grave markers on Mars. And there's a whole bunch of these, so do bear with me, there's a lot to get through here. I'll try not to take too long. Now, first of all, this one's going viral at the moment. I think I was the first to get this on YouTube. I think this was found by Rami Barlan, who's an awesome researcher out there, and it's well worth looking him up on Facebook because he's turning out to be one of the top anomaly researchers in the world at the moment, and he really is coming up trumps, this guy. So there will be a link to him in the description if you want to check out his channel. Okay, so this is the first one. Now, a lot of you may have seen this already, but I thought I would give an overview of some of these things and show how close together some of these things are, because a lot of them are not very far apart. Let's start with this one, right? This is 978, Sol 978, so this is not too far back, this one. And of course, the rover does move extremely slowly, and between sols, it probably only moves a few feet, if that. Sometimes it doesn't move at all. Sometimes it stays in the same position for weeks and weeks and weeks. So here we have it. Now this is quite small. Now some people have said it's the size of a car or something, or some people have said it's bigger. It's not. This is only about a foot, maybe 2 foot tall. I would say probably no more than 3 foot. An absolute maximum. Let's go back a little bit and I'll show you it in context. Because when you see it, you can see it up here when the text goes away here. Now, obviously there's a level of zoom used on the camera, which we don't know, but it's not very big. This is more like a Ben stone or the very top of a structure. It could even be the top of an obelisk because it's toppled over or buried. Absolutely no idea. But what is strange about it, and this is something no one else has noticed, is there's a little tiny spike on top of it. You can just see it. And when you're getting closer, it doesn't get really sharp, this, because it's a bit of a distance from the camera. It's just what I would call middle distance. But because the object's quite small, and it is pretty small, you're not going to see a great deal of detail. But there is some detail to be had, mainly the shape. The shape of it is extremely symmetrical. Now it may well be eroded. This could have been here for millions of years, could have been here just 1,000 years, don't know. But when you get in close, you can see there's a little bit sticking up here. Now it doesn't get any sharper, of course, because it's quite small and not that close. But basically, I think this is a 3-sided pyramid. This has been rotated, and judging by this angle here and here, I could be wrong. This could be 4-sided, but to me, this looks like it might be an equilateral triangle-shaped pyramid when you look down on it from above. I could be wrong, but very interesting. And I actually think this whole area, and as I've said many times before, as my subscribers will remember, that this whole area is like a bit like the Valley of the Kings in Egypt, where you have many burial mounds and tombs and building structures, small building structures, not huge buildings, and they're all in a sort of area of about 1 kilometre or two through the various lower parts of Gale Crater that the rover has been driving through in the last year or so, especially in the last year or so. So that was that one. So there isn't a great deal of detail to be seen here, but I just thought I'd point out this little point on the top here. And there's also a bit of interesting detail here. There's something hanging over it here by the looks of it. Now this may just be that there's another rock here and this is just a shadow, not really sure, but that actually looks more sharp when you see it from here before it zooms in. You can see something just there, so I'm not really sure what that is. I think it may just be just a rock here, and there's a few objects around the mini pyramid, pinnacle I call it. I think it's a capstone. There's probably a burial site here, and on this mound there's probably lots and lots of things buried underneath it. As I've said with lots of them, it makes perfect sense because Many people are criticising us researchers for exaggerating and wishful thinking and imposing our will onto Mars and what we're looking at. Well, that's absolute BS, because we established early on that there were building structures up there, and all we're doing is finding more and more of the same. We haven't put them there, we're just showing people what's there. Some people have a problem with that, and they cannot recognize structures that are intelligently designed or made when they see them. The problem is, and I do think this is a genuine problem, that there's about 25% to about 33% of people out there who cannot convert a two-dimensional image that they look at into a three-dimensional image in their mind. So they kind of almost think like a child would think when they draw a house. They just draw a box with some little square windows and a little square door and a sort of triangular roof. They cannot think in 3 dimensions, and I really think that's why we do get a lot of people saying these things are just rocks and stuff, because they generally cannot see what we're seeing, and I don't think that's deliberate at all. I think it's just a certain number of people out there who just cannot see in 3 dimensions. I think this is just across the board, and they can't help it. Not their fault. So don't be too mean on them. It's just a genuine physical state or the way the brain works in some people, I think. Right, so there's this one here. This is another perfect pyramid. Now, this wasn't found by me either. I think this was found by Rami as well. So he's found 2 of the best finds in recent months. Now, this is a different shape altogether, and it has a beveled edge here, which is curved, lovely curve. It's absolutely straight along there, and there's a nice curve. This is manufactured. I don't see how that can possibly be natural. A lot of people, including NASA, use the excuse that these things are wind eroded or water eroded. Well, according to NASA's own data, there hasn't been any running water up here for about 1 million years, at least 1 million years. And the air pressure on Mars is way too low to carve such beautiful objects, because in order for wind to move things around and erode rock, you have to have high air pressure, and you have to have very high winds to do so. Now, the wind on Mars, there of course there are tornadoes and storms and that sort of things on Mars like there are down here, but the air pressure is very low indeed, and this wind is only really just strong enough to lift a bit of dust off the ground. It really is not that strong. And down here in Gale Crater, this is almost 3 miles down here, there's a microclimate down here, and I haven't seen any evidence of wind. Although the sands have obviously shifted over time, I have not seen any evidence of wind erosion, recent wind erosion, because there simply isn't enough air pressure up there, because the atmosphere is so thin. I don't really see how it could be carving such complex shapes and such perfect shapes. So this is the other perfect pyramid. This is the Mars Perfect Pyramid building, intelligent structure. Now, I also think this is also part of a tomb, and this may be the very top part of a much larger buried structure. And you've even got these nice parallel lines going across it here, diagonal lines, and it looks very nicely made. I mean, what can I say? It's well shaped. That beveled edge really, for me, is the thing that bought it for me. So now this is much bigger than that little pyramid thing I just showed you at the start. I estimate this to be between 5 and 10 foot tall, but that may only be 2 foot. I mean, it's almost impossible to say how tall this thing is, but I'm sure we're only seeing the very top of it, and there's much buried underneath. As I've said, with a lot of these things, they look like they're largely buried, and there is definitely a tomb and building complex in this area, and we're just seeing the very, very tip of the iceberg. Okay, so there's that one there. You can always go back through these and flick through the playlist or whatever. This will be in my Mars Buildings playlist, because I'm trying to get through all the pyramid type structures, pyramidal structures that I've got up here. Now this is one of my finds. Rami didn't find this one, I don't think. So this one's pretty cool. This is also very small. This is from Sol 957. Now those two we just seen. Where was that one from? Let's get the Sol number. Sol 1000. So they're all fairly recent. These. Obviously that's Sol 1000 is the most recent one. And this one's 957, so this is going back a little bit as well. So, but these really aren't that far apart. I mean, you could walk between these in 5 minutes, I'm sure. Less than that, probably. They're not very far apart at all. Probably less than half a kilometer. Right. So this is what I would also call a pinnacle or a top of an intelligent structure that is buried under this crap here, this rubble and sand. And this is like a little sort of mini step pyramid. It's quite extraordinary. And what's weird about it also is not only is there a very strange thing on top of it, but there's a spike sticking up here and two kind of things sticking up here that look like two fingers. Now, I'm not saying that's what they are. Absolutely not. I'm just saying that's an example of what it looks like someone's hand sticking two fingers up at the camera. Now, when it gets a bit closer, you'll see what I mean. And this doesn't get very sharp either. This is quite small, middle distance. This is probably only about a foot tall. Possibly 2, but no, certainly not much more than that. So this is another small structure, and it's possibly part of a grave marker or burial site, and this is just the very top of some kind of carved structure that is just protruding from the ground, and the rest of it's probably buried. But these finger type things here, I really can't tell you what those are. I have absolutely no idea what these are. There may be a buried statue here. Who knows? With a hand sticking up? Who knows? This could be part of a plant or some sort of metal object, or who knows what that is. I have absolutely no idea. It's pure guesswork with that. But this actual step structure here, it's got these weird little steps on it. Now that's not down to pixelation. I thought it was initially, but if you look at this rock here, it's fairly smooth. So the pixels aren't that big. These are actual square blocks. Now this is like a little mini pyramidal structure with steps, and it's really quite weird. And let's get in a little bit closer and you'll see. Now it doesn't get much sharper or more stark than that really, but there's something on top of it as well, which is kind of semi-transparent. So whatever this is, it's most likely manufactured, and I don't see how a natural rock would have steps on it like this. And you can clearly see some steps there. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So this may be a different style we're looking at here. I mean, this looks more like something from Earth, like you would see in the Far East, rather than somewhere like Egypt, for instance, where you see the pyramid structures. And of course, pyramids are not, these large pyramids in Egypt are not tombs. They are basically functional buildings. That they've never actually found a single pharaoh buried inside a pyramid. That's one fact that everyone should remember. And basically, this is a lie that's been perpetuated about the pyramids for well over 150 years now. They are not tombs. The pharaohs in Egypt were buried in the Valley of the Kings. They were not buried in the pyramids. They found a box in the pyramid. They found other boxes that look a little bit like sarcophagi, and that's what they assumed they were. But they were never. They never actually housed mummies or bodies at all. In fact, they're completely the wrong size, and were used for other things like electroplating gold and possibly housing the Ark of the Covenant and that kind of thing, like in the Great Pyramid. So there's a lot of myths still floating around about the pyramids. There's a lot of BS still taught in schools about these things, and people need to understand that the large pyramids on Earth are not tombs. They are functional buildings. They were probably generating electricity, pumping water, possibly desalinating water. The Great Pyramid at Giza was found with a very thick layer of salt inside it, which says to me that they were processing water through it from the Nile. When it was originally built, the Nile actually completely surrounded the pyramid. It was like on an island, and would have sucked the water in and then probably pumped it back out to desalinated it or treated the water somehow and then pumped it out to the farmlands further away, and there was probably a very elaborate irrigation system that went with that. So there we go. Now that doesn't really get any more detail, but when you see it in negative here, you can see these little holes in this very top part here, and the steps probably a little bit clearer there as well. They're not even, but this may well be damaged like everything else. Right, so that's that one covered. Now there was this one I published quite a while back now, about a year, probably over a year ago. What's the date on it? 2014 August, almost a year ago. Now this is in a completely different area. Now I cannot remember exactly where. It will say in the description. Let's have a look. This is a HiRISE image. It says not taken by the rover. You can get all the information there. You can download the image. I recommend you download this one. This is one of my favourite images of Mars. This is taken from space, quite a low level of zoom, high level of zoom, and a sort of low elevation angle. So we're looking almost side on, which is extraordinary for the telescope on the HiRISE. And the quality of this image is absolutely amazing. It's one of the best you'll ever see. Now, I won't go on too long about this, but there is a little... The main thing is the obelisk. Now, this is doing quite well on YouTube now. The Mars Obelisk, Monolith and Buildings by Hot Spring Lake, I think it says there. Hot Spring Water or something. Now, this is steam. This milky stuff is steam coming up from the ground. I won't go on too much about this. If you want to see more on this, you'll have to go back to it, because this is quite a long video, this one. It's over 20 minutes long. But the obelisk I found almost right at the end of this video, and it's right up in the corner. Now this is being distorted somewhat by the camera because it's near the corner of the image. It's tilted the thing over, and there it is. Look. Okay. Now I really cannot see how that can be a natural structure, and there's also a very symmetrical looking structure here. And it does get closer, so we'll have a closer look. And you can see that this is almost perfectly symmetrical, this thing. And sticking up, and I estimate it to be something like 50 foot tall. It could be 100 foot. It could be just the tip of something much, much larger. This ground here is probably largely covering it. This could go right much further down, and it certainly looks artificial to me. And the fact that it's near another structure that also looks artificial kind of adds gravity to it, I think, gravitas. And so there's those two up there, and there's also down here, further down, some other pyramid structures, and there's also some crazy stuff over there. But when you look at this, it's hard to get an idea of scale of that. But when you look at it up close, you can sort of estimate the grandeur of it. It's very large and imposing, and it's looking over this valley, which seems to have water in it, and also a large chalk deposit next to that. So it's crazy. So if that is a chalk deposit, there was life on Mars, because chalk is made by billions of dead sea creatures, crustaceans mainly, I think. And there's hot spring water coming up, so there's steam coming up, so there's liquid water on Mars. And there's a dirty great obelisk and another structure nearby. There's also a couple of pyramid structures in that video as well. So I recommend that one if you haven't seen that already. I'm trying to keep this short. I'm starting to waffle on a bit here. Right, now this is more evidence of burial artifacts. I think this is a coffin, a stone coffin, and it's very similar to some that were found in Europe, which were used in Europe, I should say, and have been found recently, post-Roman or late Roman in style. I'm only saying that because of the shape of the coffin. I'm not saying it's Roman at all. I'm just saying it's similar in design and style. With a stone lid here and what looks like the box underneath. Now this is damaged, of course. This could be 1,000,000 years old, could be 1,000 years old, who knows. But this has been obviously probably buried for a long time, and the sand has eroded away. And it seems to have what look like hieroglyphs alongside of it here in gold. And when it's enhanced, you can see that a bit more clearly. There's the negative, and you can see these what look like symbols here. Now this may be natural. I could be wrong, but other people did. I think other people may have published this as well. I think Will It What's Up in the Sky did, and did a quite cool video on this as well. I think 1 or 2 other people have. But I got in a lot closer here. But it doesn't get any sharper as with a lot of these things. This is also quite a way off from the rover, but this is quite large, about 6 foot long, this thing. So it's human sized, and here's an example of a late Roman or post-Roman stone coffin with a similar stone lid and box, which is also slightly damaged here and here. So it's very similar. I don't think this is an unreasonable comparison at all. Some people do. Don't know why. Perhaps they just don't want us to find things on Mars. Right, okay, there's that one. There's also this one. Now, this is a view of what I think may well be a temple building or some kind of building, but from the side. This is not from above like many of the others, or from a distant, a sort of angle. This is there are lots of images of this. The rover spent a lot of time around here looking at this. Now, this is which sol is this? It should say on here. I think this is 540. Now, this I've got here. Here we go. It's probably better to look at it on the actual Gigapan itself. Sol 540. Now, you can clearly see here, without you don't need to be a geologist or an archaeologist or a paleontologist to see that there is a long straight structure here with blocks, and it looks like the building protruding from this great big mound here. Now this mound isn't that big, it's probably only 20 foot or so from there to there. It's not as big as you think. The scale on Mars is very difficult to get your head around, but let's go in and have a look at this anyway. I'll go full screen with that. I'm hoping that my graphics card won't crash here, because sometimes it does with these things. Right, so here we go. Now when you're getting close, you don't need to do anything to this, and you can clearly see that this is a building, and it's nice and straight. It's not perfectly straight, but it's eroded and damaged like most of the things on Mars, and you can see these large blocks here which are cracked, but these foundations are really quite large blocks. So whoever built this was able to move large blocks around on the surface by the looks of it. I mean, it may well have been cut from very localized rock. But this, when you zoom back, what you've got to appreciate here is that this structure goes all the way through, is buried here and comes back up here. So it goes right through this mound. And there's other interesting things in here. There's this weird rock here with a slot in it here, which looks like it's been cut. That was pretty cool. And there's some weird things around it as well. And if you go right to the other side, which is the other end of the wall, I think, or structure that's sticking out here, there's this guy. Now, I published this guy in quite a lot of videos. One of my favourite finds. Statue. Looks almost Aztec or Central American in style. You know, 2 eyes, nose, mouth, chin. There's an ear there and a headdress. If you want to see more on that guy, you'll have to go to my channel. There's at least 2 or 3 videos with him in. He's called the Mars New Head Statue, I think, that one. Now, and there's this thing. Now, this is pretty unremarkable to look at, but it's basically what looks to be a coffin lid, similar to the one on this video. Let's compare the two. Okay, let's go back a bit. Let's go back a bit more. That's too close. Let's go back a bit further. want to see it. Oh, there we go. Well, this may not be a stone coffin, but it certainly looks like one. And there's something weird just here as well, which may be part of a carving or something, like a little head there. So this seems to be a stone lid on a coffin. Many people have interpreted it that way. And this looks like another similar stone lid, possibly for a coffin. And this image, this is Sol 439, so this isn't that far from this one. It's a similar Sol number. It's only a few days, literally a week or two before that, I think. So it's not far from there. It'd be within 100 yards or so, probably. And if you look at this Sol 439, this is from the Gigapan. There are lots and lots of blocks and manufactured stone pieces in this area. I've only picked out this one really because it's the clearest in this area, and there are lots here. There's one just here. Look, there's a stone block that's cut there. There's loads of them in this image. They're all over the place. A lot of them are quite small, but this was reasonably sized, and I estimate this to be quite a bit smaller than the other stone coffin. I think this is probably something like only 2 foot long, possibly 3. I could be way out on that. It could be much longer, but judging by the other things in the area and the distance from the rover, this is only about 2 foot long. So this may be a child coffin, much like this. This isn't a child coffin. This is another Romano Roman style coffin. This is Romano British. This is, I think, probably from about the 2nd century AD or something, and it could be earlier. This has more of a curved lid structure rather than completely flat. You can see a curve to it here, much like the one on Mars. It has a very symmetrical shape. But this gives you an idea of the sort of thing to look for. Classic, old-fashioned Roman, Greek, or Egyptian style stonework is what we all should be looking for, because that's what's there. And look how straight this edge is here. It's very, very straight indeed. And there's other blocks here and stuff like that as well. So it's not just that thing in isolation. There are many, many structures, and we found countless stone blocks. In fact, I found so many now I don't even bother publishing them anymore, because there's so many. You can't possibly make a video about every little square block you find on Mars, because there's just so many of them. They're all over the place, and in some images there's 3 or 4 next to each other, and sometimes they're piled up. Sometimes they're part of a wall or a structure. So you cannot possibly publish them all. And this is one of my favourite finds. Now this is from PIA 18473. This is one of the images, one of the publicity images that NASA put out for the press. And of course, no one in the press really looked at it properly, did they? And if they had, they would have seen this, which is what I think is a gravestone, or a couple of gravestones next to each other, or some kind of similar structure. And whilst we're here, I may as well mention the fact that this here, in front of it, this long brown structure, is petrified wood. And there's petrified wood all over the place on the surface of Gale Crater. A lot of it must have been washed in there if there was water in there. It was probably washed down in there and it's rotted and dried out and freeze dried and fossilized basically. And this is everywhere you look, and there's little pieces of it. There's huge long pieces of it, and it's everywhere. But no one cares one little bit about it, even though wood is an organic thing and is a form of life when it's alive. So, but no one cares one little bit about it, and it makes me quite annoyed really, because, and there's also coral everywhere as well. You can see coral, different types of coral lying around in amongst these rocks in some areas. There's loads of it, but no one cares one little bit about that, and no one's bothered really to mention it. I just don't think anyone cares. It's extraordinary. But this looks like to me a gravestone, and it's perfectly curved at the top there. Look how rounded this is. Let's move up a bit. There we go. It doesn't get any sharper, but you can see clearly that this is manufactured. That is almost a perfect semicircle there. And there's a strange little thing sticking up here. Like there's something carved into it. There's some kind of... And this is just so weird, this black object. It's very, very strange indeed. I mean, this is probably quite a thin piece here, like a gravestone, and it's in heavy shadow. The shadow's caught it and has blacked it right out. But you can just about make out here that there's a thing sticking up there, like a straight object or part of the structure sticking up. I have no idea what that is. Very strange indeed. One of many similar things that I've found, but quite clear. Now I've darkened it right up there, and you can see that a bit better now. It goes right up, and there seems to be something here, possible symbols on this, but we haven't got enough detail to determine what they are, unfortunately. As with most of these things, this is quite a long way off. So there we go. There it is with a blue filter, and maybe you may be able to see that better. So there we have it, folks. There are pyramids like this fella as well. Now, I'm not saying these are actual pyramids. I'm saying they're pyramidal structures. I really think these are the very top parts of tombs. They're not actual large pyramids as we know them. This probably is also very similar. Different type of pyramidal structure here, much more narrow with steps. So that looks more like something from the Far East or perhaps from Mexico, but on Earth, you know. It's a very different design, but it has probably a similar function. There's this obelisk, which is nowhere near any of that stuff in Gale Crater, and that structure there. And I do recommend this because there are other what look like pyramid structures further down here. There's a whole bunch of them in there. There's this coffin. There's the large building near the Dingo Gap area from Sol 540, which I showed you here. I mean, there's loads of stuff in here. Well worth a look, this. And there's the coffin and other things I showed you as well. So, thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon.